Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams, with your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of College Admissions Toolbox. Today, we're talking with Aviva Legatt. So let's get started. Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, Aviva. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, Steve. And how about you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you on the program here. Aviva, you have an incredible background. You've worked in the admissions office at Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and now you're offering private college admissions consulting services, and you've helped students get into top universities like Cornell, Brown, Yale, Columbia. So tell us a little bit about your journey and, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think my love of college admissions really began with my own process of applying as a student myself. I was coming from more of a low or middle income background. I was in a school where there are a lot of high income people with a lot of cultural capital. So I really picked up a lot about the process kind of very quickly just by being in the environment with all of these people who knew a lot. But because I didn't know a lot myself, I had a very steep learning curve. So my own process really inspired me to eventually seek out work in college admissions. I started my career in music business. I studied that at New York University. I thought I would, use my business sense to help out the music industry. But then I realized when I was in college that there was this whole field devoted to university life and higher education. And I thought that would be a better career path for me. This led me to pursue my master's degree and eventually my doctorate at University of Pennsylvania, where my specialty is higher education. And while I was working, while I was in school for my doctorate, I was also working full-time at the Wharton School, and I had an admissions position there where I was the liaison to the Penn admissions office for Wharton applicants, helping to give input on those students. And I also oversaw a pre-college program called Leadership in the Business World, which is designed for rising high school seniors who want exposure to a business school environment. And what I found in my work in both LBW, Leadership of the Business World, and the admissions office is that you can be the most amazing student, but that's not necessarily enough to get into a great school like Wharton or like Penn. Really what differentiates those who get in are those leadership development moments, those moments where students are able to reflect on their progress, where they are in life, and they know where they want to go, and they have taken steps to fulfill the many sides of themselves while in high school. So what I do now in my college admissions practice is I focus on leadership development, helping students, of course, excellent grades and excellent scores are important, but really helping them to discover themselves as high school students, to help them choose activities and opportunities that will enable them to expand their horizons, and eventually to help them articulate those in a compelling way when they go to apply.
Oh, wow, Aviva, that sounds like such a valuable insight to have. You've got to look at these students, see whether they really have they've had those leadership development experiences. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about is, a lot of students obviously know they've got to get those impressive leadership positions on their resumes, on their brag sheet, the activity sheet, because they want to stand out. Now, how do you tell whether someone's just kind of like a figurehead or whether they've really had one of those pivotal moments in their personal experiences? How do you read between the lines and look for that?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Steve. Well, there are some involvements that are common across many high school students. For example, debate team, Model UN, certainly impressive, but also quite common. And a lot of students, I think you're getting at, kind of feel the need to check the boxes and say, I was president of this club, or I was vice chair of this club, and I went to this competition or that competition. But what you really see when the applicants stand out is what they write about their experiences in the activity list on the Common application. How do they make sense of those? And also students who have a resume and can really detail what they did in the clubs and what impact they had are really the ones who are going to stand out. As a lot of admissions folks say, there are many students who have a laundry list of different activities on their resume where, they're president of everything, but they're sort of giving themselves in many different ways to add up to, who knows what exactly. When you're on the other end reading the applications, all you really have is that piece of paper describing what the students' experiences were. And so if those aren't well articulated, it's not clear exactly what the impact was for the school or for that student in whatever activity they were involved in.
So how do you feel about a full activity sheet, like a full brag list, a list of like, 5, 6, 7 leadership positions over the course of high school? Like, what do you make of that when you see a fairly full list?
I think in terms of a full list, it's not how thin or how full it is. I mean, if it's really thin, there's only one thing on there that could be a potential red flag. But if it's a full list, I think it's totally plausible. It's just a matter of their ability to articulate, what did they do? And then also other parts of the application need to corroborate it. So if there was a significant activity on their list, but the recommender didn't talk about it or didn't mention what an impact it had on the school, then it sort of gives the admissions officers wonder about, well, how important was this really? So that's a really key piece, is having all of the different parts of the application add up to really demonstrate that impact.
Well, Aviva, you definitely touched it on something that I want to delve a little bit deeper into, which is, the steps that you take to kind of verify and judge, the validity of a student's extracurriculars and this, what they've really gained from those. So could you try to walk us through like the step-by-step process that you take when you're looking at an applicant's list of activities and trying to figure out, what sort of experiences they've really had?
Sure. Well, on the admissions side, there will be many considerations to that other than just what the student has written. So a student will be evaluated in the context of their high school, in the context of their background. Maybe they're from another country originally, so they'll be evaluated from students with students from that country. So looking at, what is the typical profile of a student coming from this high school? How closely does this match in terms of the students we've accepted in the past from this high school? What do we know about this high school and what students from this high school typically do in terms of how many involvements they have and where they spend their time? And how unique is the student in that context? So there's no hard and fast answer about it. It's very contextualized. And in terms of my work individually with students, I speak with students one-on-one when they're early in their career. I speak with them about once a month. And then when they get closer to the application stage, I speak with them more frequently. And, they have no reason to fabricate to me about what they've done. But many times they often don't realize what an impact they've had and how well they've done and what this really means in terms of the big picture of them versus the larger context. So what I do is I try to help them to tease that out and to put that down on the page in a way that's clear and compelling to an outside reader.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely making your experiences compelling, presenting yourself in the best possible light. It's so important. A lot of the students I work with, I see they kind of experience this imposter syndrome where they've done something super impressive, but they're kind of a little bit afraid to toot their own horn and they don't realize how unique they are. Is that something you ever come across?
Yeah, totally, Steve. But definitely a lot of students I work with don't realize how amazing they are, and they, get really worried about their friends' admissions decisions from last year and, how they compare exactly. But as you know from working with many students and just, being human, everyone is unique. It's just a matter of how you can make yourself stand out on that page at the end of the day.
So what are some of the steps, a student who's in 10th grade or maybe the beginning of 11th grade, what are the steps they can take, to present themselves in the best possible light, given their accomplishments, given their extracurriculars?
Well, for 10th and 11th grade, are you thinking of presenting themselves in terms of a new opportunity within high school? Or are you thinking of some other opportunity that they would apply for at a college?
I'm thinking more about what are the steps they can take with regard to their extracurriculars now so that when it comes application time, they'll be able to present themselves in the best possible light. So what sort of strategies can they pursue?
Sure. So what I always encourage students to do first is to really hone in on what are the things that they're most excited about, what gets them up in the morning. For example, I have one student, and I work with a lot of Chinese students. So many Chinese students, do play the piano or the violin. But one student I have is especially passionate about the piano. And so I encourage her to seek out some pre-college opportunities that would enable her to really get into her musicianship and really understand herself as a performer. So she is going to the Stanford summer program this summer for youth orchestra. So that's just one example of, the kind of advice I would give to a student. It's really comes down to what are they really good at and how should they capitalize on that, as opposed to doing the activities that people think you should do, like the newspaper or the yearbook, or, things that many high school students do that aren't really necessarily personalized types of activities. They're more, they tend to be available at many schools, but they're not really necessarily unique when you're looking at college admissions. So I encourage students not to follow the crowd and to, certainly do the yearbook or the newspaper if they're interested in that, but to find things that are truly unique to their experience and the things that they enjoy doing, and just to do as much of that as possible. Also, many students do not have any work experience before they go to college. So I encourage students, if they want to get a part-time job, just to build some, character, responsibility. It doesn't have to be an impressive organization, but that's usually really impressive in the college admissions process. When you see a student who's working, 10 hours a week at, a retail store and is doing really well there, even though it's not, kind of a sexy activity, it actually is extremely impressive in the admissions contest.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. A lot of those retail non-professional jobs still, build valuable skills that admission officers will notice and realize the value of. They know that if you're just doing an internship, filing papers, you may not be learning too much substantive knowledge, but you can, even just getting a managerial role, at a fast food establishment of some kind, that can still teach you valuable skills. You're managing other employees, you're taking on real responsibilities, you get a little bit more hands-on work there. So I think that definitely shouldn't be undervalued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great, I actually think college admissions in the U.S. has a lot of great values to impart on students in terms of what they value, and not that everybody should, do things just for college admissions, but I think, college admissions values good character, responsibility in the community, independent thinking, curiosity, and those are all great qualities to have. So I think that many of the attributes that the college admissions officers are looking for are things that students should be seeking out in high school. However, as I said, they're oftentimes just checking the boxes instead of doing things in a more reflective, purposeful way.
Absolutely. So if an applicant has, for example, you had this one applicant who was really involved in music. Mm-hmm. So you encourage her to take the next steps. And then in terms of pursuing the orchestra, but then beyond that, what can she do? It's coming up, summertime, fall, she's going to be putting together her applications. What can she do to, show admission officers that this has been a real growth opportunity for her, and it's not something that her parents are forcing her to do because it looks good?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a key part of that is really making an impression wherever students go. So for this program, for example, she should connect with her professors and connect with her fellow students and really make a community for herself in this program, and really talk about that in an application. For example, maybe she starts a new little ensemble in the larger playing group. That's something that maybe starts out informally, but is actually something that's really makes the program special. So I encourage her just to maximize her opportunities while in the program and ensure that she is taking time to reflect on what she's done, when she goes to apply for college next year. Absolutely. So,
not just going through the motions, but really taking a step back to think about, the meaning of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how, why people like us are helpful, Steve, because we are that outside voice, encouraging them to understand what their experiences really mean and encourage them to not just check the boxes, but to, make something special out of their high school experience.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes to mind, I would recommend to students is, while you're in the program, maybe take some notes or keep a journal a little bit just with some ideas and thoughts and reflections you've had, while you're pursuing this, not waiting, until months and months later, maybe when that big performance, it's already a distant memory. And then you're actually thinking, oh man, I want to write about this for my college essay. What was I thinking at the moment? If you plan ahead a little bit, just take some notes, take some reflections, it can really be helpful later in crafting that essay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion.
Now, I want to shift gears a little bit, Aviva. What we really love to hear on College Admissions Toolbox are stories. So could you take us to the moment in time of the worst college admissions moment that you've seen or experienced and tell us the story behind it?
Sure. Well, one moment really stands out, and I think if you don't know the person, it maybe be a little bit less dramatic than your viewers might or your listeners might like. But I'll do my best to sensationalize it. So picture this: we had a student at Wharton who was probably the most involved, lovely, service-oriented, female leader you can imagine. So picture someone who you would respect and admire, and multiply that by 10. This girl is not only a wonderful leader, but she also was a great outreacher. So, for example, when Ashton Kutcher came to campus, she talked with him about her goals with her organization. She has a startup, and he was so compelled that he gave her his phone number and Mila Kunis's phone number to follow up about it. So this is this kind of girl who's just absolutely exceptional.
Oh my God! Wow.
yeah, really exceptional, and so really just a wonderful student, and someone who's going to be a wonderful alum in terms of ambassador to school, giving back, and so forth. So her sister came up in the admissions process, and her sister had a very similar background to the girl who this girl I was just describing, the one who connected with Ashton and Mila. So very similar testing profile, a little bit lower. But, not quite as many involvements, but certainly a lot of the involvements that, this older student had, this younger student had. But it was a really, really tough decision. But unfortunately, the younger sister did not make it, into Penn. And we were very, very disappointed because, we know what a wonderful ambassador the sister was. And, we also trusted, based on what we read in the application, that, the younger sister would have been a really strong student as well. So that was just a really painful moment when, you understand why the decision is made. But ultimately, is always a question when you make a decision, is this the best possible decision? But you realize, this is made with much larger considerations in mind than just one person and their relationship with a sister. There are many other factors, demographic, academic, and so forth that a school has to consider when making decisions. But, admissions is a subjective process, and it's very human. So, obviously, when you get attached to someone, you'd be disappointed for them if their brother or sister wasn't able to get in. So I think that was one of the hardest moments for me, for sure.
Oh, wow. So yeah, if you had to describe the debate in your head as you're evaluating this application, you've got the sister who's already there and is going to be a powerful voice for the university. Then you've got this younger sister who maybe isn't quite as impressive. What are some of the, take us a little bit deeper into what are some of the factors you're looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so part of the factor with any student like this one is the geography. So where is the student coming from, geographically? And the student was from New York State. And there are no shortage of applicants from New York State.
Certainly not.
So when you have a student from New York State, they're going to have a very, very impressive numbers because you just simply have so many of them. So the debate, of course, I think, is to take someone who's maybe a little bit under the profile versus somebody who's more, classically stellar. That was really what the debate came down to, and I don't think there's ever a right answer or a wrong answer, but that was what it came down to in terms of how does she stack up on paper with respect to other applicants we have from New York. And unfortunately, her marks did not quite meet the threshold that the admissions office was looking for at that time.
No, I mean, it's a really powerful nugget. I mean, it's unfortunate, for her that she happened to be from New York, but I think definitely one thing our listeners have to keep in mind is that, that is a reality, that schools have to, put together a diverse class with students from across the country and across the world. Mm-hmm. And so if you're from New York, maybe you're going to be a little bit stronger as an applicant applying to a university where there aren't nearly as many New Yorkers. If you're a New Yorker applying in the tri-state, mid-Atlantic, New England area, you're not going to be as unique as if you're applying to a school in Louisiana or California or somewhere else in the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, exactly. And it's very difficult for those applicants. And also for, my Chinese students, similarly, I work with a lot of Chinese students. And as you know, Steve, the amount of Chinese students has gone up exponentially over the last 8 years. It's just been astronomical. And so there are students from China who have really, really impressive testing profiles, really impressive grades, and academic achievements, but so often, they do lack those extracurricular activities. And when you have such a great volume of students from one area, whether it be New York or China or California, applying, it's that much harder to get in from those areas.
Absolutely. So it's just something you got to keep in mind when you're choosing the schools to apply to. Maybe you need to apply to one or two at least outside your region where maybe you're going to stand out a little bit more in terms of creating that geographically diverse class.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Thanks so much for emphasizing that. I want to move now to another story. Tell us about a moment of insight that you've seen or experienced.
I think probably the best examples of those are from my program that I ran called Leadership in the Business World, because those are students who I got to see before they went to college, and then I saw them after they went to college. So we had one student who, on paper, I absolutely fell in love with this student. He was from Oklahoma. He lived on a farm with his family who made very, very little money every year. A family of 10 kids, and they're all all very academically impressive. This is just a little qualifier, we had extra background on these students in the pre-college program than we would have had in the admissions process. And he was a chess champion, and he had taken classes at the local community college, even though he had been homeschooled. So, obviously, anyone could say, oh, anybody can get A's in homeschool, but he had also taken classes at community college and done really, really well. But he had never been outside of his home state of Oklahoma. So we brought him to our pre-college program, and he was certainly, very quiet at first when he came, but, as the weeks went on, he really opened up, and his team, they had a business plan competition at the end, and his team, won the competition. And it was great to see him, get inspired to come to Wharton after that, and also to do so well in this program, coming from a background that, you don't classically see at a school like Penn. So I think that was a really great moment. And then he ended up getting into Wharton and going, and now he's off to a very high-powered finance job next year. So I feel very good about that, because, I feel like we inspired him, and I felt inspired myself by bringing someone like this with an underprivileged background, a very non-traditional background for Penn, and opening them up to everything I had to offer there.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like an incredible moment for that student. Do you know if how he happened to reflect on that with regard to his application?
That's a great question. I think what was really outstanding was that he was able to, understand and appreciate what a big impact the pre-college program had on him. And I think ultimately that was really useful to him when he did go to apply, to be able to say why he had such a great experience and why he could see himself at Wharton.
No, absolutely. That's such a valuable story. Thanks so much for sharing that, Aviva. Mm-hmm. I want to move on now to the lightning round, where I'll ask you some rapid fire questions. You give me some rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, great. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
Study hard. Just one?
No, you can give more if more than one comes to mind. Shoot.
So study hard, maximize out your high school's curriculum, and play to your strengths outside of the classroom.
Great advice. So could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to college admissions success?
I think time management. Students who can manage their time well do really well, because they are the ones who have time to do their homework exceptionally well and get involved. So I think time management is huge. Absolutely.
Getting it all done. What's one online college admissions resource that you absolutely love?
It sounds cliche, but I actually really like College Confidential, because I really enjoy seeing what people's opinions are and what their perceptions are, because I find it helpful in my own work.
Sure. Keeping your finger on the pulse, definitely. Mm-hmm. What's one book that no college applicant should be without, and why?
That's a great question. I'm a really big fan of the Princeton Review list of, I think it's 343 best colleges. I really like that book because it describes, not only the selectivity and so forth, but it doesn't focus as much on the ranking. It focuses more on what is the school like culturally. And I think it's a great resource for students who aren't sure what kind of school they want to go to and are looking for more detail about what the campuses are like.
Absolutely. And we'll link to that one in the show notes for sure. What are you working on these days?
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of work with Chinese students, and I'm planning to continue that. It's not official yet, but I will be launching a summer program next year for students who want to do an application boot camp with me. And I'm also going to have an English immersion track as well.
Oh, that's really exciting. You'll have to keep us posted on that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So really just focusing on that. And I also have another aspect of my practice, which is focused on leadership development and coaching. So I work with prospective graduate students who are people who are considering going to graduate school in the future, or people who are planning to go to graduate school, and coaching them one-on-one. And I also still do work with Penn as part of their MBA program. I'm a resume reviewer, and I'm a facilitator for executive teams as part of the executive education group at Wharton.
Wow, you've got a lot going on. I'll bet that you're a master of time management.
Oh, yeah, I try. Well, it's great, Steve, for being flexible, working for yourself. You can fit in all the many projects that you want to do, but sometimes it's hard when you have to turn things down because there's so many great things to do out there. And, that's what I love about being a business owner is you're getting to pursue fun projects at my own schedule. But you're right, time management is key.
Well, totally. Well, I'm glad you took the time to come on the show today. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm at Aviva, A-V-I-V-A, at vivedconsulting.com. That's V-I-V-E-D consulting.com.
Awesome. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for coming on the program, Aviva. We'll have to have you back soon. Take care.
You take care.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams. One of the hardest things about the college process is finding the money to pay for it all. I was only able to get the scholarships I needed after I figured out how to present myself and what I'd done in the best possible way. So now, I want to give you a free worksheet I made. It's based on my experience working with thousands of high school students. I'm sharing it with you because I really think it's going to help you turn your achievements into scholarship money. So get your free worksheet at www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/scholarship.